Few, perhaps no possessions create as much joy as a cottage for those families fortunate enough to own one. Cottages pull everyone together. The shared cottage experiences seem to deepen our love for each other. Yet it's also true that few, perhaps no possessions create as much family tension as a cottage for those families unfortunate enough to inherit one. Cottages pull everyone apart. The shared cottage experiences seem to deepen our contempt for each other. Sadly, I'm not really kidding. Seriously, I'm not really kidding. I truly cannot believe how many estate planning, cottage-related nightmare stories I've heard over the years. It seems very few cottage-owning families have figured out how to smoothly transition ownership from one generation to the next. Somebody or some buddies seem to always end up bitter. You may argue, how can they be so ridiculous? First world problem. It should be all about family harmony. They should consider themselves lucky to inherit a cottage. Fair points, but after hearing the details of dozens of cottage pass-ons gone wrong, I'm convinced this is pretty tricky stuff. I'm actually sympathetic in that it's very difficult to strike all the right balances and make everyone happy. Frankly, impossible in some cases. For example, how are the cottage's operational costs going to be handled by the beneficiaries going forward? Split evenly among them or based on usage? What if James loves the cottage but can't afford his share of the cost? Should a formula based on incomes be used? Or what if Jackie wants to renovate but Sasha doesn't? Or Caroline wants the cottage the same 2 weeks every year as her husband's company shuts down those dates, but Murphy's Law, that's the same time Mike wants it, needs it, as his sons are in camp all summer except those very same 14 days. What if one beneficiary wants to sell and two don't, and one doesn't care? Just saw that one. These examples are just the tip of the iceberg. Can you imagine when blended families have to deal with all of this, or third generations? Oh my. Now instead of 3 kids, there are 9 grandkids, 9. But they'll all cooperate with each other perfectly. Yeah, okay. So what's the answer? How should you deal with your cottage from an estate planning perspective? I don't know. No blanket approaches work for everyone or even for most. There are just too many differences between families, a lot of moving parts. But start here. Have the conversation. Get all relevant parties together and talk through the points I brought up and more. Have everyone openly discuss their hopes for the cottage. Encourage even selfish perspectives be voiced. Get people sharing, get people listening, get people thinking. Then, and this is so important, meet again in a few months. Make sure people's desires and thoughts haven't changed now that they've had time to think things through and to ruminate over other family members' opinions. Introduce at this second meeting the rough plan you're formulating based on their feedback thus far. Then, if needed, talk to the professionals. Perhaps setting up a trust makes sense. Perhaps there are tax considerations that need to be looked at. Really, what I'm saying is this. The last thing you want is for your cottage, a place of great memories, a true family treasure, to end up being a wedge that drives your family apart. But it happens all the time. You need multiple conversations and some thoughtful planning to avoid that. Do not assume this will work out well on its own. Empirical evidence says it won't. Yells it won't, actually.